sounds nice to say things like, oh, I want to help the poor, everyone deserves free college, everyone deserves free healthcare. But in reality, getting people hooked on the government and not giving them pathways to become self-sufficient obviously is not compassionate.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with ReasonTV, and today we're talking with Kristin Tate. She blogs at the libertarianchick.com, and she's the author of the great new book, Government Gone Wild: How DC Politicians Are Taking You for a Ride and What You Can Do About It. So this is a libertarian manifesto aimed at millennials especially. How do you summarize your core message?
My project with this book was to reach an audience that would not necessarily already be politically involved, not even just involved with libertarianism, but politics. As a millennial myself, I regularly notice this general apathy within my generation. And it's not that my generation is stupid, we're just depressed with the state of affairs when it comes to politics.
What's so depressing? Look, I'm a baby boomer and I'm depressed by politics. What's depressing you guys?
Well, every time you see anything in the news about politics, it's all just negative, negative, negative. Oh, we're $19 trillion in debt. The job market sucks. A lot of us are living in our parents' basements. It's just honestly easier to tune out, go on Snapchat, and stalk your ex-boyfriends on Facebook than it is to try to engage in these issues in a way that's fun and frankly uplifting.
Throughout the book there's an optimism and an upbeat energy, which is great, but then it's also specific. I mean, you're saying, part of the problem is that the government, or Republicans or Democrats, they're always trying to control people. They're always trying to limit your choices or tell you, do this, don't do that. How does that factor into a kind of millennial malaise about politics?
We like freedom. I mean, that kind of comes with the whole internet age. We like having a lot of control over our lives. So this big brother idea of the government always watching us, trying to control every aspect of our lives is a big turnoff. And frankly, again, I think it's depressing, and it's not a message that resonates with millennials. So again, I think that it's easier to just throw your hands up and just say, I'm not going to engage in this at all, than it is to try to sort through these issues in a way that is conducive to progress.
What's your libertarian origin story?
Well, my dad's more of a Republican and my mom's a Democrat, so they're divorced, obviously.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I kind of grew up disagreeing with both of them on a lot of issues and not really knowing where I stood politically. And then as I became older and I sort of got myself into the world outside of my house, I started noticing among my peers a very, very dominant shift towards the left, especially in college, because you have all of these professors who are, in my classes, they were kind of like brainwashing the kids, even in these political science classes. So that really disturbed me. So at first I kind of thought, maybe I'm a Republican, and I started going to these Republican student groups, and the second I got into these groups, I thought, okay, I'm definitely not a Republican, because they were talking about policing the world and bombing places, and all this fear-mongering was going around, and that's kind of when I discovered libertarianism. I think I heard Ron Paul speak at some sort of student speech I think he was giving at the University of New Hampshire, and I just thought, this guy makes a lot of sense.
Here, let me ask you a specific question about Ron Paul, who, more than anybody probably in the past 10 years, really kind of put libertarianism on steroids. And surprisingly, he appeals to tons of college students and younger people, even though he is, somewhere between 70 and 1,000 years old. And he doesn't play to the crowd. I mean,
right.
He speaks in long sentences, complicated thoughts. What is the appeal of Ron Paul, do you think? Or what was it for you and to millennials in general?
The guy is just so damn authentic, and it's so nice and a breath of fresh air to have someone like that in politics, because we as a generation, I think, and not just millennials, everyone is sick of these canned politicians giving written out speeches, and it's just so unauthentic. So when someone like Ron Paul came along, he's goofy, he's kind of, he makes mistakes in his speeches, he laughs at himself. That was very, very inspiring for a lot of young people.
So that's kind of the style, but then the substance also resonates, it seems.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, of course, because when you look at a lot of polls, which Reason it's always writing about this. Millennials as a generation, even though they may not know they're libertarians, they tend to be very more accepting with different social lifestyles and then fiscally conservative. So that really is libertarianism. So yes, Ron Paul's message resonated with a lot of people in my generation because of that.
In the book, especially in the final chapter or so, you talk a lot about compassion in the book and about how compassion and politics should go hand in hand in a particular way. What's, compassion and libertarianism rarely, get talked about in the same breath. So what's the role of compassion in your form of libertarianism?
Well, compassion literally means to suffer through something with somebody. And this idea that giving people handouts from the government is compassionate is just totally ludicrous. And it's something that I think libertarians and also some conservatives really need to shine a spotlight on. Even with Bernie Sanders, we're seeing this movement among young people getting behind this man because they think he's so compassionate. Because it sounds nice to say things like, oh, I want to help the poor, everyone deserves free college, everyone deserves free healthcare. But in reality, getting people hooked on the government and not giving them pathways to become self-sufficient obviously is not compassionate. We are literally creating generations of people who are dependent on the federal government to get by. We have over 50% of Americans relying on checks from the Fed every month. So this is not compassion. We need to shine a spotlight on this issue because I think it's a winning issue for libertarians. Like you said, not many people mix those two words, libertarianism and compassion, but I think this ought to be focused on more because I think it's a winning issue for libertarians. It's just a matter of getting that message out there in a way that is uplifting and kind of makes sense to people. Is
there anybody in the major parties that you're hoping will become president?
No, honestly, this election makes me want to projectile vomit. It's a fascinating election, actually, but there's really nobody out there that I really love running. Everyone has their issues in my eyes. I think Hillary and Bernie are obviously the two worst choices in my opinion, but I really don't see any very liberty-friendly candidates in the two parties right now.
On that uplifting note, We'll leave it there. We've been talking with Kristin Tate. She blogs at thelibertarianchick.com, and she's the author of the excellent new book, Government Gone Wild: How DC Politicians Are Taking You for a Ride and What You Can Do About It. Kristin, thanks for talking.
Thank you, Nick.
For ReasonTV, I'm Nick Gillespie.